Hello and welcome to the News9 Plus show. On the 11th of December 2023, the Supreme Court of India unanimously upheld the abrogation of Articles 370 and 35A. The Supreme Court also directed the Union government to restore the statehood of Jammu and Kashmir and hold legislative assembly elections no later than September 2024. Today, the Jammu and Kashmir elections have been declared. It looks like an NC-INC alliance government after almost 15 years. Now, J&K ceased to be a state after Article 370 was abrogated in 2019. Prime Minister Narendra Modi, while campaigning during these elections, had said, "We had promised in the parliament that J&K will be a state again." Now, after the NC-INC has swept these elections, it looks like the NC's Omar Abdullah is set to return as state chief minister. But for all practical purposes, as things stand today, Jammu and Kashmir is a bit like Delhi NCR and Puducherry, a union territory with an elected legislature. What are the next steps towards its statehood, and why statehood for Jammu and Kashmir is important? Joining me to discuss this are Meeta Chakravarti, spokesperson of the INC, Danish Iqbal, political analyst and former spokesperson of the JKNC, Bhanu Chandra Nagarajan, political advisor and political analyst. And in the studio, I have with me my senior colleague, editor News9 Mediaverse, Rakesh Kar. Rakeshji, I want to start by asking you this. Was the verdict a surprise to you?
Well, I think, thank you, Sandeep, for calling me into the studio. I have 3 or 4 key takeaways from this verdict. It is on expected lines in my own calculation. So it's fair to call it a NC verdict.
Yes.
You know, INC is essentially a tail in the game. And I have for all couple of decades been pleading that a regional party must govern J&K.
Right.
And, you know, this alliance with the centrist party, whether it is BJP or Congress, doesn't truly, help the state fully meet its aspirations. So point number 1, with NC in the driver's seat, I'm happy that the people of the state, especially in the valley, would feel completely, in line and sync with this verdict.
Right.
Number 1. Number 2, the verdict in J&K is on expected lines because the Jammu profile, by and large, stays with BJP.
Right.
Congress has failed to make an impression in J&K. I felt it would do even better in Jammu. So, it's a NC story and a BJP story. Third most important part to my mind is that mainstreaming of separatist parties, erstwhile, also is a big win for Indian democracy.
Right.
So they may not have won the election, but we've sent out a very strong message after a decade of militancy being at peak and then coming down slowly after Article 370 abrogation. They're coming into the electoral foray, to my mind, is a very big strength area.
Right. Mainstreaming,
yeah. I mean, they were not have won, but I think we a step closer to them being in the national fray. PDP versus NC. Now that's the other big debate.
Yes.
To my mind, PDP represents a darker shade of mainstream, yet separate, supporting separatists.
Right.
In that sense, NC, especially with Umar in the command, has been a minister in the NDA government when Vajpayee was the prime minister. So I think there is going to be some happy tiding between the BJP at the center and NC in the state.
Right.
And lastly, I would have loved that Congress wins some seats in in Jammu and BJP wins some seats in Srinagar, because that is the true emblem or marker of state being fully integrated.
But that hasn't quite happened.
That hasn't. So I'm saying that's a bit of a setback.
Yes.
NC being in the driver's seat is a good plus. Congress needs some introspection.
Right.
And BJP also needs to look at why it couldn't do that big ticket number in Jammu and not open an account in Srinagar, which it claims to have done the hard work for all these months and years.
Yes.
And mainstreaming of so-called separatists is also a plus for me in terms of the larger democratic message.
Right, but essentially it's a bit of a deja vu kind of feeling that we have, that you have a very strong regional party in alliance with a central party. As you mentioned, it's back to the INC and NC, or rather the NC-INC combined, which is going to rule the state for another 5 years, it looks like, not 6. But Meeta Chakravarti, now the big question is Statehood for Jammu and Kashmir. That's one political plank almost all parties have campaigned for. We want Jammu and Kashmir the way it was pre-2019. Is there a deadline by which you would like to see this happen, or do you see Jammu and Kashmir being like Delhi, ruled by a very powerful lieutenant governor, or in Puducherry, but more Delhi, where the Union Territory, as we know, is administered by the Home Ministry. So there's, seeds of a potential conflict in the future that the LG's Manoj Sinha, and you have in Delhi, you have the LG VK Sinha, but VK Saxena. But tell us how important statehood for Jammu and Kashmir is going to be. Is that going to be the INC's big plank after winning these elections?
First of all, thanks for having me in your show. And I believe that yes, we are going to give a lot of importance on getting the statehood back, which, by the way, has also been stated by all political parties across the political spectrum. And I think that's going to be a very high priority for Indian National Congress and as well as our alliance partner, NC. And the Delhi example that you took, that model of governance and the constant conflict that we see between Delhi's elected PM and the LG is hardly an ideal example to follow. It has caused a lot of grievances, it has caused a lot of setbacks, and I would sincerely hope that it is not repeated in J&K. So one of our priorities when we form the government will be to get the statehood restored.
Yes.
Now we have to see as how practically and how quickly can that be made possible, because what we would not want to see is an opposition India alliance government in the state having or in the Union Territory right now having a constant conflict with the appointed LG.
Absolutely. So the three scenarios, Meeta, I would like to underline here are that one is a possibility, and I'm just going to mention these three scenarios very quickly. One is, of course, a return to pre-2019 status when Jammu and Kashmir had special status under Article 370. Likelihood of that happening?
Unlikely.
Very unlikely.
Very unlikely. I think there's going to be a common minimum program, if I can use that phrase, which has been misused quite often, between the centre and the NC-led government in J&K. So I think that is good for peace across the board, rather than revisiting a pre-2019 situation.
So the pre-2019 scenario is completely ruled out. The second scenario is that it becomes a state like any other Indian state, the 29th state of India, like all the other 28 states. It has a legislature, the law and order, land, all of these are under the control of the state government. That seems to be the most likely scenario. But is there a third scenario, Rakeshji? Is it possible that you could have a very unique special status again where law and order is not under the control of the state government, as is being speculated, that it is quite possible that given the fragile security situation there with external factors involved, with Pakistan fomenting terrorism on the one hand, that you could look at a special status for Jammu and Kashmir where law and order remains with the Lieutenant Governor, or in this case the Governor, and the state would continue to be run as a normal routine. But that would be very extraordinary.
Well, I mean, I have to go by two statements. One is by Umar Abdullah just before the elections, when he said that I'm not going to take dictation from LG.
Right.
So I think that's a fair enough indication that he will have his own mind to apply when he sits in the Chief Minister's chair.
Right.
But will LG leave the entire elbow room? I think that's a matter of debate, which is unlikely. But Umar Abdullah, when he was the Chief Minister and militancy, by and large was, so to say, brought down to some level.
Right.
Then it peaked up again.
Yes.
He was heading the Unified Command.
Yes.
So in that sense, we are not looking at J&K from a different prism.
Right.
The Unified Command, which looks at law and order, if I can use that phrase, in a very macro sense.
Yes.
I mean, to the extent of defining and detailing, who all will man say Lal Chowk. Where all will be CRPF, BSF deployed, where will be the army deployed inside the city, if that's law and order. One is the external borders. We're not talking about that. You're talking about the law and order in that sense.
Within the state.
So, as I mentioned right in my opening remarks, with Umar in command, I don't see too much friction because he's prone to, being very mature about, making his demands. And I think there's a fair amount of moderate acceptability with the BJP internally
Yes.
about him as CM versus Mehbooba as CM.
Greater comfort with Omar as Chief Minister.
Yeah, and I would also bring in his father. I mean,
Yes.
he's apparently asked his father to come in as the CM,
Right.
whereas the party wants the younger one to be the CM.
Yes.
I think a very happy situation, to answer your question in
Yes.
brief, is Umar deals directly with New Delhi and Amit Shah.
Right.
Without the trapping of, unfortunately or fortunately, Congress playing too much on his mind.
Right, absolutely. And it's back to 2009, 2014 as it was
That's
in
right.
his first
That's right.
tenure as
That's
Chief
right.
Minister.
Yeah.
Interesting times ahead, but Danish Iqbal, I'd like to bring you on this. Why is statehood so important for Jammu and Kashmir right now? I mean, this is now the elections have been settled. The national conference is won by a landslide. As Rakesh was just mentioning, it's back with the Congress. It's the 2009 scenario. Once again, why is statehood so important now for the people of Jammu and Kashmir? Given the fact that law and order has been restored, situation is under control, it's like any other Indian state today.
Well, simply because it allows the elected government to function fully. If you have a truncated power arrangement in Srinagar, even after the people have voted so
Right.
enthusiastically, this wouldn't go well with the voters, and I don't think, in my very humble opinion, that either the powers that be in Delhi or the people in Srinagar
Right.
would like it.
Right.
Statehood is important. Statehood grants you the powers over the law and order, over the administration, over the central services like the IAS and the IPS.
Right.
It allows the chief minister and the cabinet to function. And as somebody who has seen Kashmir, Srinagar, the security panning out over the last 10 to 15 years, you all have to understand that security is a tool in the political management when it comes to Kashmir. It might be quite different in the rest of the country, but its security is very important
Yes.
component in the overall management of politics. And apart from these nitty-gritties of administrative hiccups, why it is so important to restore the statehood now is because that the country, our country, the great country
Yes.
of India, has actually, and I would like to give the credit to the Honorable Prime Minister, has actually given the mainstream politics in Kashmir a resurrection,
Right.
has given mainstream politician a social sanctity. You did not have the social sanctity earlier with the
Right.
elections, with the victories.
Yes.
I'm right now at my home in Srinagar,
Right.
and I'm listening on the roads. There's so much noise and so much happiness
Yes.
that elections have, that the results have come, and
Right.
it has probably come in a good way.
Right.
So you didn't see, you didn't really see it earlier. For me, it doesn't really matter that who
Yes.
wins the election, who doesn't. But what I am really focused at is that the social sanctity
Yes.
that wasn't there has now been granted to elections, and it would be, I repeat and I reiterate, it would be an historical blunder
Right.
if you do not return the statehood to this overwhelming mandate that the people have
Yes.
given.
Absolutely.
National
Yes,
Conference.
yes, Danish. Absolutely. Well stated there. The fact that the people of Jammu and Kashmir have reposed their faith in India's democracy, in the democratic process. They've come out in large numbers. They've voted for their parties of their choice. And it's really important for that choice to be honored now with statehood. Bhanuchandra Nagarajan, Home Minister Amit Shah said recently that at a rally on the 7th of September that we have said that at an appropriate time after the election, we will give statehood to Jammu and Kashmir. He said that in Parliament as well. There seems to be no timetable laid out. It's left to the centre to decide when to give statehood to Jammu and Kashmir. You see that happening sooner rather than later?
I think the victory of the Jammu Kashmir election process happened on the day of elections when 65%
Yes.
of the electorate came out and voted, and that's a historic number. And also, like one of the previous speakers said, many of the separatists, people who are outside the political process, came in, and I think
Yes.
that is something that we should all celebrate. And NC has won, so kudos to them as well. So I think, see, this is step number one. In fact, I would say step zero. So step number one is like, the democratic process started, the elections have happened, now there's going to be a government. Okay.
Yes.
And the return to statehood per se will actually take its time. There'll be political toing and throwing, and there'll be jousting and all. That is one aspect. I think now Jammu and Kashmir should actually focus on development, on infrastructure, developing its tourism, like any other state,
Yes.
right? And India is going to be the third largest economy in the world sooner than later. I think Jammu and Kashmir government and the young, especially the youth of the state, should jump into the process, take advantage of the opportunities, and move ahead. I think that will give another pedestal to actually make a stronger claim for the statehood to be restored faster. So I think we should just not focus on one issue. I think the development process is something that we should focus on. I think the government should be, its feet should be held to fire on what it does on development.
What it does on development, indeed. But Rakeshji, over to you. This demand for statehood. I mean, the fact that the people of Jammu and Kashmir have voted in these very large numbers, as our panelists have pointed out, and it's now you have a government in place. That statehood is going to be the next big demand of the people, all the political parties. Do you see this happening in a reasonable time frame?
I would imagine that's the right word to use. It should happen in a reasonable time.
Right.
And the onus to do should be from the center, not from the state.
Yes.
See, Omar Abdullah should feel truly blessed and privileged, and
Yes.
India should feel very happy that he's inheriting a democratically elected environment
Yes.
when the peace quotient is extremely high.
Right.
This election is a vote for peace.
Yes.
It is a vote for stability. It's a vote for development. And I'm particularly very happy because it's a vote for a regional party.
Yes.
And that party, which among all other regional parties, has a very strong connect with the center.
Right.
So Omar needs to thank New Delhi for getting over a state which is in the best of its law and order kind of an environment.
Yes.
So I don't think he'll jump the ship and start asking for statehood and make it a political issue.
Right.
The trust factor in delivering elections and statehood should sustain, and I'm happy Congress, BJP, NC, PDP, they
Right.
all have voted for this.
They've all voted on this.
And
Yes. Yeah.
most importantly, I want to also bring in, the LG
Yes.
is no stranger to politics.
Yes.
He is he's a Hindi heartland strongman politician who was once considered to be a likely candidate for the Chief Minister of Uttar
Right.
Pradesh.
Yes.
So if both act in trust and faith and in tandem
Yes.
between Umar, because at a very young age he showed deep amount of maturity, being the MOS, for MEA,
Yes.
when Vajpayee brought him in,
Right.
and now so many years have passed, he's seen chief ministership, he's
Right.
seen the turbulence after that,
Yes.
he's seen peak of militancy, he's seen now the center bringing in Article 370 and the law and order returns of that. Someone
Right.
might say that politically it has, so to say, diminished the people of the state.
Yes.
But I don't think this verdict and this voting percentage
Yes.
is a fair testimony to that democracy not
Right.
only sustains and grows in India,
Yes.
it's a big verdict to the world at large that J&K is an integral part of this country.
Right.
And people there have voted for India and have invested tremendous faith in this country.
Absolutely, that's an important point there, Rakeshji made that this is the one election that the entire world watches very carefully. Elections in Jammu and Kashmir, there's no other state election that has an international quotient as Jammu and Kashmir does, and I'm sure that people would have been watching very carefully the foreign nations. All this propaganda about law and order, security, peace process, democracy, all that the people have voted.
There was a massive delegation of foreign diplomats
Yes.
who went and witnessed election firsthand.
Absolutely.
What better proof than this subterfuge and propaganda unleashed across the borders?
Yes.
Which is absolutely based on lies and lies and lies.
Right, lies and lies and lies, but the truth has emerged victorious. And as our panelists have just told us that this is the victory of democracy, it's the triumph of India's political process. But thanks very much for putting that in perspective. I'd like to thank Danish Beg, Meeta Chakravarti, Bhanuchandra Nagarajan, and of course my senior colleague in the studio here, Rakesh Kar, for talking about the next steps in Jammu and Kashmir's return to normalcy, which is the restoration of statehood. That's mission statehood for Jammu and Kashmir.